Senate will come to order. Mr. Carpenter, please call the roll.
Senators Aguilar,
Excused.
Baumgardner, Cook, Corum, Court, Crowder, Donovan, Finberg, Fields, Garcia, Gardner, Guzman, Hill,
Excused.
Holbert,
Oh, excused.
John, Jones, Kagan, Kafalis, Kerr, Lambert, Lumberg, Marble,
Excused.
Martinez Humenic, Merrifield, Moreno, Neville, Priola, Scott, Smallwood, Sonnenberg, Tate, Todd, Williams, Zinzinger, Aguilar, Marble, Hill,
All right, let's go.
Mr. President.
Here. With 34 present, 0 absent, 1 excused, we have a quorum. Senator Gardner, kindly lead us in the pledge.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, friends in the gallery, Mr. and Mrs. Colorado watching on Channel 165, please join us in the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Approval of the journal. Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the reading of the journal for Monday, April 16th be dispensed with and the journal be approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You have heard the motion. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the motion is adopted. Committee reports.
April 16, 2018, the Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology has had in consideration had hearing on the following appointments and recommends the appointments be placed on the consent calendar and confirmed. Member of the State Electrical Board for a term expiring July 1, 2018, Scott R. Pandy of Fort Collins, Colorado, serves as general contractor actively engaged in the building industry, reappointed. April 16, 2018, the Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology has had in consideration had hearing on the following appointment and recommends the appointment be placed on the consent calendar and confirmed. Member of the State Plumbing Board for a term expiring July 1, 2021, Catherine A. Donahue of Windsor, Colorado, an unaffiliated and journeyman plumber, appointed. April 16, 2018, the Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology has had in consideration had a hearing on the following appointments and recommends the appointments be placed on the consent calendar and confirmed. Members of the Uninsured Employer Board for a term expiring September 1, 2019, Roger Allen Hayes of Aurora, Colorado, to serve as a representative of employers appointed. For terms expiring September 1, 2020, Elsa Martinez Tenorio, J.D. of Elizabeth, Colorado, to serve as an attorney who represents injured workers, appointed. Amy Newton of Westminster, Colorado, to serve as a representative of insurers, appointed. April 16, 2018, Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology. After consideration of the merits, committee recommends the following: House Bill 1174 be referred favorably to Committee on Appropriations. April 16, 2018, Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology. After consideration of the merits, committee recommends the following: House Bill 1308 be referred to Committee of the Whole. The favorable recommendation placed on the consent calendar.
Senate Services.
Correctly printed, Senate Bill 243, 244, 245, 246, 247, and 248. Correctly engrossed, Senate Bill 12, 24, 42, 83, 85, 145, 150, 191, 193, 203, 220, 221, 225, 231, and 232. Correctly revised, House Bill 1069, 1156, and 1250. Correctly re-revised, House Bill 1040, House Concurrent Resolution 1001. Correctly enrolled, Senate Bill 66, 71, 195, and 202.
I know. Committee reports.
April 16, 2018, the Committee on Judiciary has had on consideration and had a hearing on following appointments and recommends the appointments to place on the consent calendar and confirm members of the Colorado Commission on Judicial Discipline effective June 30th, 2017 for a term expiring June 30th, 2021. Christopher Gregory of Fort Collins, Colorado, serves as an attorney appointed. April 16, 2018, Committee on Judiciary, after consideration of the merits, committee recommends following: Senate Bill 222 be referred favorably to Committee on Appropriations. April 16, 2018, Committee on Judiciary, after consideration of the merits, committee recommends following: Senate Bill 223 be amended as follows: as amended, refer to Committee of the Whole. The favorable recommendation placed on the consent calendar. April 16, 2018, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs, after consideration of the merits, committee recommends following: House Bill 1131 be postponed indefinitely. April 16, 2018, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs, after consideration of the merits, committee recommends following: House Bill 1089 be postponed indefinitely. April 16, 2018, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs, after consideration of the merits, committee recommends following: House Bill 1278 be postponed indefinitely. April 16, 2018, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs, after consideration of merits, committee recommends following: House Bill 1296 be amended as follows: as amended, refer to Committee of the Whole. The favorable recommendation placed on the consent calendar. April 16, 2018, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs, after consideration of merits, committee recommends following: Senate Bill 233 be amended as follows: as amended, refer to Committee of the Whole. The favorable recommendation. April 16, 2018, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs, after consideration of merits, committee recommends following: Senate Concurrent Resolution 3 be referred to Committee of the Whole. The favorable recommendation. April 17, 2018, Committee on Appropriations, after consideration of merits, committee recommends following: Senate Bill 163 be amended as follows: as amended, referred to Committee of the Whole. The favorable recommendation. April 17, 2018, Committee on Appropriations, after consideration of merits, committee recommends following: Senate Bill 59 be amended as follows: as amended, referred to Committee of the Whole. The favorable recommendation. April 17, 2018, Committee on Appropriations, after consideration of merits, committee recommends following: Senate Bill 16 be amended as follows: as amended, refer to Committee of the Whole. The favorable recommendation. April 17, 2018, Committee on Appropriations, after consideration of merits, committee recommends following: House Bill 1335 be referred to Committee of the Whole. The favorable recommendation. April 17, 2018, Committee on Appropriations, after consideration of merits, committee recommends following: House Bill 1240 be referred to Committee of the Whole. The favorable recommendation placed on the consent calendar. April 17, 2018, Committee on Appropriations, after consideration of merits, committee recommends following: House Bill 1235 be referred to Committee of the Whole. The favorable recommendation placed on the consent calendar. April 17, 2018, Committee on Appropriations, after consideration of the merits, committee recommends following: House Bill 1186 be referred to Committee of the Whole. The favorable recommendation placed on the consent calendar.
Please add the Majority Leader to the roll. Third reading of bills, consent calendar. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read the titles to all the bills on the third reading of bills, consent calendar?
House Bill 1156 by Representative Lee and Senator Holbrook concerning limitations on penalties for truancy. House Bill 1250 by Representatives Kraft, Tharp, and Sice and Senator Priola concerning an analysis to improve compliance with departmental rules by regulated businesses. Senate Bill 232 by Senators Sonnenberg and Cafalas and Representative Escar and Hansen considering a clarification of the calculation used to determine the amount of money that must be spent to acquire works of art for capital construction projects that are subject to a lease purchase agreement.
Mr. Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move the following bills on third reading bills consent calendar, consisting of House Bill 1156, House Bill 1250, and Senate Bill 232.
Is there any discussion on any of the bills? The motion is for the adoption of all the bills on the third reading of bills consent calendar. Are there any no votes on any of the bills? Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request to be a no vote on Senate Bill 232.
Senator Moreno will be a no on 232. Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask to be a no vote on 1156.
Senator Sonnenberg will be a no on 1156. Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request to be a no vote on Senate Bill 232.
Senator Jones will be a no on 232. Any further no votes? With 34 ayes, 1 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1156 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Kafalis, Senator Moreno. With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1250 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Martinez-Humenick, Senator Tate, Senator Aguilar, Senator Kafalis, Senator Zenzinger. With 33 ayes, 2 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 232 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Cook, Senator Tate, Senator Guzman, Leader Garcia, Senator Lundberg, Senator Lambert. Third reading of bills. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read the title to Senate Bill 12?
Senate Bill 12 by Senator Hill and Representative Pedersen concerning including military enlistment as part of the post-secondary and workforce readiness performance indicator for public schools.
Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 12 and ask for your support, colleagues.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion for the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 12. Are there any no votes? Senator Merrifield, Senator Kerr, Senator Guzman, Senator, we're on no votes on Senate Bill 12. With 32 ayes, 3 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 12 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Todd, Leader Garcia, Senator Smallwood, Senator Priola, Senator Gardner, Senator Scott, Senator Neville, Senator Lambert, Senator Lundberg, Senator Martinez-Humenick, Senator Sonnenberg, Senator Crowder, Senator Cook, Senator Tate, Senator Williams, Senator John. Please add the President. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of the Senate Bill 24.
Senate Bill 24 by Senators John and Tate and Representative Singer concerning modifications to the Colorado Health Services Core Program administered by the Department of Public Health and Environment to expand the availability of behavioral health care providers in shortage areas in the state and in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Senator Tate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. I move Senate Bill 24 on third reading and final passage and urge an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion for the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 24. Are there any no votes? Senator Hill, Senator Sonnenberg, Senator Baumgardner, Senator Neville, Senator Smallwood, Senator Marble, Majority Leader Holbert. With 28 ayes, 7 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 24 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Crowder, Senator Priola, Senator Guzman, Senator Kafalis, Senator Fields, Senator Zenzinger, Senator Jones, Senator Moreno, Senator Williams, Senator Todd, Senator Merrifield, Leader Garcia, Senator Martinez-Humenick, Senator Kerr, Senator Court. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read the title of the Senate Bill 191?
Senate Bill 191 by Senator Gardner and Representative Carver concerning the local government limited gaming impact fund.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 191 on third reading and final passage.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you. Members, this is the limited gaming impact fund bill. It was a great bill. Now, with the help of the distinguished senator from Jefferson County, it is an absurdly great bill. We can be sure that this money will not be spent on administrative costs such as male facials and doors exceeding $138,670. $650 apparently would be okay. But, so I ask for an aye vote on Senate Bill 191.
Is there any further discussion? The motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 191. Are there any no votes? Senator Kagan. Senator Guzman. With 33 ayes, 2 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 191 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Kerr, Senator Neville, Senator Tate, Senator Martinez-Humanic. Please add the President. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of Senate Bill 145.
Senate Bill 145 by Senator Kafalis and Representative Janala concerning the implementation of Employment First Advisory Partnership recommendations to advance competitive integrated employment for persons with disabilities in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Senator Kafalis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. I move Senate Bill 145 on third reading and final passage and respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? The motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 145. Are there any no votes? Senator Sonnenberg, Senator Baumgardner, Senator Cook, Senator Marble, Majority Leader Holbert. There are no votes on 145. With 30 ayes, 5 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 145 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Zenzinger, Senator Fields, Senator Williams, Senator Todd, Senator Merrifield, Senator Aguilar, Senator Jones, Senator Kerr, Senator Court, Senator Guzman, Leader Garcia, Senator Moreno, Senator Martinez-Humanic, Senator Neville, Senator Tate, Senator Smallwood, Senator Priola, Senator Donovan, Senator Kagan, Senator John. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of Senate Bill 225.
Senate Bill 225 by Senator Lambert and Representative Hamner concerning the definition of an early college for purposes of the Concurrent Enrollment Programs Act.
Senator Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 225 on third reading and final passage. This bill does not have an appropriation, and therefore I would ask permission to pass the bill without a third reading amendment.
Is there any further discussion? The motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 225. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 225 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Majority Leader Holbert, Senator Guzman, Senator Kerr, Senator Gardner, Senator Martinez-Humanic, Senator Smallwood, Senator Priola, Senator Sonnenberg, Senator Tate, Senator Scott, Senator Baumgardner, Senator Neville, Senator Marble, Senator Cook, Senator Merrifield, Senator John, Leader Garcia, Senator Todd, Senator Court, Senator Williams, Senator Kafalis, Senator Hill, Senator Donovan. Please add the President. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of Senate Bill 221.
Senate Bill 221 by Senator Corman and Representative Catlin concerning the election of a county commissioner in a county with a population less than 70,000 by the voters residing in the district from which the commissioner runs for election.
Senator Corum.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 221 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 221. Are there any no votes? Senator Crowder, Senator Merrifield, Senator Todd, Senator Williams, Senator Kagan, Senator Fenberg, Leader Garcia, Senator Guzman, Senator Zenzinger, Senator Fields, Senator Jones. 24 ayes, 11 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused. Senate Bill 221 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Sonnenberg, Senator Baumgardner, Senator Cook, Senator Marble, Senator Neville, Senator Gardner, Senator Martinez-Humenick, Senator Lambert, Senator Tate, Senator Priola, Majority Leader Holbert, Senator Lundberg, Senator John, Senator Donovan, Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request that my name be removed as a co-sponsor.
Senator Fields' name will be removed as co-sponsor. Please add the president, if you haven't already. If you haven't already. Can you do it again? Okay. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read the title of the Senate Bill 231?
Senate Bill 231 by Senators Lambert, Moreno, and Representative Young concerning a task force on the transition of persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities from educational services to home and community-based services in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 231 on third reading and final passage.
Senator Lambert.
I'd ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 231. Are there any no votes? Senator Sonnenberg, Senator Baumgardner, Senator Marble. With 32 ayes, 3 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 231 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Zenzinger, Senator Kafalis, Senator Jones, Senator Guzman, Senator Fields, Leader Garcia, Senator Kerr, Senator Court, Senator Donovan, Senator Aguilar, Senator Williams, Senator Todd, Senator Fenberg, Senator John, Senator Kagan, Senator Martinez-Humenick, Senator Crowder, Senator Tate, Senator Todd, Senator Neville. Please add the president. Senator Kagan.
Mr. President, I ask that my name be added as a co-sponsor to House Bill 1156.
That will be taken care of. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read the title of the House Bill 1069?
House Bill 1069 by Representatives Arn Thurlow and Senator Quorum concerning the allowable use of reclaimed domestic wastewater in connection therewith allowing reclaimed domestic wastewater to be used for toilet flushing, making an appropriation.
Senator Quorum.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1069 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any further discussion? The motion before the body is the adoption of House Bill 1069. Are there any no votes? Senator Marble, Senator Neville, Senator Smallwood, with 32 ayes, 3 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1069 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Crowder, Senator Scott, Senator Priola, Senator Tate, Senator Martinez-Humenick, Senator Cook, Senator Baumgardner, Senator Sonnenberg, Senator Hill, Leader Garcia, Senator Guzman, Senator Kafalis, Senator Fields, Senator Jones, Senator Donovan, Senator Moreno, Senator Kagan, Senator Court. Too much information, sir. Senator Fenberg, Senator Merrifield, Senator Todd, Senator Williams, Senator Aguilar, Senator Kerr, Did you say flush out a few more co-sponsors? Is that what you said? Oh, my goodness. Oh. Let's stop that while we're ahead. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of Senate Bill 42.
Senate Bill 42 by Senators Donovan and Crowder and Representatives Catlin and McLaughlin concerning the creation of the Agricultural Workforce Development Program in connection with making an appropriation.
Senator Crowder.
Thank you, Mr. President. We move Senate Bill 042 on third and final reading. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? The motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 42. Are there any no votes? Senator Baumgardner, Senator Hill, Senator Cook, Senator Marble, Senator Neville, Senator Gardner, Senator Lambert, Senator Lundberg, Senator Smallwood, Senator Priola, Senator Tate, Senator Martinez-Humenick, Majority Leader Holbert. With 22 ayes, 13 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 42 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Todd, Senator Guzman, Leader Garcia, Senator Williams, Senator Fenberg, Senator Aguilar, Senator Court, I got you, Senator Williams, Senator Kafalis, Senator Fields, Senator Moreno, Senator Coram, Senator Merrifield, Senator Kerr. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of Senate Bill 85.
Senate Bill 85 by Senator Todd and Representative McLaughlin concerning providing financial incentives for educators to work in rural areas in connection with making an appropriation.
Senator Todd.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. President and colleagues. I move Senate Bill 85 on third reading and ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 85. Are there any no votes? Senator Neville, Senator Lundberg, Senator Lambert, Senator Smallwood, Majority Leader Holbert, Senator Marble, Senator Baumgardner. With 28 ayes, 7 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 85 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Martinez-Humenick, Senator Priola, Senator Crowder, Senator Tate, Senator Merrifield, Senator Williams, Senator Aguilar, Senator Moreno, Senator Kagan, Senator Donovan, Senator Court, Senator Kerr, Senator John, Senator Fenberg, Leader Garcia, Senator Guzman, Senator Kafalis, Senator Fields, Senator Zenzinger, Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of Senate Bill 203.
Senate Bill 203 by Senator Marble and Representative Lontine concerning the provision of independent counsel to indigent defendants in municipal courts.
Senator Marble.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 18-203 on third reading and final passage and ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? The motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 203. Are there any no votes? Senator Sonnenberg, Senator Baumgardner, Senator Gardner, Senator Lambert, Senator Cook, Senator John. With 29 ayes, 6 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 203 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Guzman, Senator Moreno, Senator Kagan, Senator Court, Senator Kerr, Senator Kafalis, Senator Aguilar, Senator Williams, Senator Fields, Senator Todd, Leader Garcia, Senator Merrifield. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of the Senate Bill 220.
Senate Bill 220 by Senator Neville and Representative Ransom concerning a prohibition on sanctuary policies.
Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 220 on third and final reading and ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Court.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will simply reiterate what I said yesterday. As a Denverite, this bill offends me to my core. I urge a no vote.
Is there any further discussion? The motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 220. Are there any no votes? Leader Garcia, Senator Koufalas, Senator Guzman, Senator Fields, Senator Zenzinger, Senator Jones, Senator Moreno, Senator Donovan, Senator Court, Senator Kerr, Senator Fenberg, Senator John, Senator Merrifield, Senator Todd, Senator Williams, Senator Aguilar, Senator Kagan, with 18 ayes, 17 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 220 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Scott, Senator Baumgardner, Senator Gardner, Senator Hill, Senator Cook, Senator Smallwood, Senator Lambert, Senator Lundberg. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read the title of Senate Bill 83?
Senate Bill 83 by Senator Lundberg and Representative Ransom concerning the creation of income tax credits for non-public education in connection therewith reducing an appropriation.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 83 and ask for its favorable adoption.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yesterday, I believe the sponsor said that he had sponsored some version of this bill since about 2005, almost every year since then. Since this is my last opportunity to come down and speak against the bill, I will, and ask for your no vote. Just to reiterate again a few economics lessons, that if this would actually close down an entire school or lay off particular teachers in a school, then perhaps we would actually see the savings that the fiscal note claims. But since they will be spread across all 178 districts, tens of thousands of schools across Colorado, tens of thousands of teachers, that this will we will not see the savings that the fiscal note claims. In addition, very simple for the proprietor of a private school right now to just raise their rates, and any of that $51 million supposed savings would actually end up going to those private schools. So with that, I'll ask you to be a no vote.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I thank the senator from Jefferson County to come down and speak for his final time, but I'll afford that opportunity for myself as well, because it's that important that we recognize the distinction between supporting this bill or not supporting this bill. It's legislation that's designed to give parents and students the greatest opportunity for the greatest education possible for themselves. No, it does not support a monopoly of public education. And I'm quite grateful that we don't really have that, because we have the options of private school and homeschool. But it's an unequal playing field, if you will, because all the money comes to the public system, and on the private side, parents end up doing double duty for funding their children's education. And that is not right. So the way I see it, a no vote for this bill is a vote for the monopoly. A yes vote is a vote for the people, the parents and the students, and the best education opportunities for all here in the state of Colorado.
Senator Merrifield.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's also my last time to have the opportunity to come down and rail against this bill. But I'm too tired today to rail, so I'll just say one thing. 1,275 public school teachers.
Is there any further discussion? I think there's probably some clarification needed. Did you say this is the last time you're ever going to speak at the well, or just on this? Oh, okay, well. The motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 83. Are there any no votes? Leader Garcia, Senator Guzman, Senator Cafalas, Senator Fields, Senator Moreno, Senator Kagan, Senator Donovan, Senator Court, Senator Kerr, Senator Fenberg, Senator John, Senator Merrifield, just once, Senator, Senator Todd, Senator Williams, Senator Aguilar, Senator Zenzinger, Senator Jones. With 18 ayes, 17 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 83 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Majority Leader Holbert, Senator Scott, Senator Priola, Senator Smallwood, Senator Lambert, Senator Gardner, Senator Cook, Senator Crowder, Senator Baumgardner, Senator Sonnenberg, Senator Martinez-Humenick, Mr. Carpenter, would you please read the title of Senate Bill 193?
Senate Bill 193 by Senator Quorum and Representative Carver concerning additional limitations on state agency occupational regulations in connection with making an appropriation.
Senator Quorum.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 193 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any further discussion? The motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 193. Are there any no votes? Senator Jones, Senator Zenzinger, Senator Guzman, Senator Kerr, Senator Fenberg, Senator Court, Senator Donovan, Senator Kagan, Senator Moreno, Senator Aguilar, Senator Fields, Senator Cafalas, Senator Williams, Senator Todd, Senator Merrifield, Senator John, Leader Garcia. With 18 ayes, 17 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 193 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Tate, Senator Lambert, Senator Baumgardner, Senator Crowder, Senator Hill, Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of the Senate Bill 150.
Senate Bill 150 by Senators Finberg and Lumberg and Representatives McKean and Lee concerning measures to facilitate voter registration of individuals in the criminal justice system in connection with making an appropriation.
Senator Fenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 150 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any further discussion? The motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 150. Are there any no votes? Senator Sonnenberg, Senator Baumgardner, Senator Cook, Senator Marble, Senator Neville, Senator Gardner, Senator Lambert, Senator Smallwood, Senator Priola, Majority Leader Holbert, Senator Scott. 24 ayes, 11 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused. Senate Bill 150 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Crowder, Senator Aguilar, Senator Moreno, Senator Kagan, Senator Court, Senator Merrifield, Leader Garcia, Senator Guzman, Senator Cafalas, Senator Donovan, Senator Kerr, Senator Williams, Senator Fields, Senator Martinez-Humenick, Senator Hill, Senator Todd, Senator Tate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask to be added as a co-sponsor to Senate Bill 203, please.
Senator Tate will be added to Senate Bill 203. 203? 203. Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I would like to also ask that I be added as a co-sponsor to 1156, House Bill 1156, please.
Please add Senator Todd as a co-sponsor to 1156. No, you can add. Senator John.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor to Senate Bill 150, please.
Senator John will be added as a co-sponsor to Senate Bill 150. Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to be added as a co-sponsor on Senate Bill 231.
Senator Gardner will be added as a co-sponsor on Senate Bill 231. General order, second reading of bills, consent calendar. Mr. Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. There has been a request to remove Senate Bill 235 from the second reading consent calendar, and it be placed first on the general order's second reading of bills.
I move.
I make that motion to move Senate Bill 235 off of consent calendar and be the first bill on the general order's second reading of bills.
The request has been made to remove Senate Bill 235 from the consent calendar, and a motion is made to place it at the beginning of the general order's second reading of bills calendar. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and that motion is adopted. Senate Bill 235 will be placed at the beginning of the general order's second reading of bills calendar. General order, second reading of bills. Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of General Orders, second reading of bills calendar.
The motion before the body is for the Senate to resolve itself in the Committee of the Whole for consideration of the General Order, second reading of bills calendar. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Senate will resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of the General Order, second reading of bills calendar, and Senator Priola will take the chair.
The Senate will come to order. Well, the court rule is relaxed. Will the clerk please read the titles of Senate Bill 235?
Senate Bill
230. Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 235 be laid over till Thursday, April 19th.
Everyone's heard the motion. Seeing no debate, Senate Bill 235 will be laid over till Thursday. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 235 is laid over. Carpenter please read Senate Bill 77?
Senate Bill 77 by Senator Crowder and Representatives Ryer and Valdez concerning estate sales and use tax exemption for used motor vehicles.
Senator Crowder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 77 and also the appropriations as well as the finance report.
Senator Court.
Thank you. Oh, wait, are we doing the Finance Committee report?
I believe we're on the Appropriations Committee report.
Okay.
Oh, Finance. That's
All right,
correct.
never mind, I'll speak to the bill.
To the Finance Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Finance Committee report was relatively simple. It basically stated that the exemption of consumption and exemption of storage vehicles would also apply to this, and also it moved the date to January 1921.
Is there any further discussion on the
I'm sorry,
Finance Committee?
2019.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on the Finance Committee report for Senate Bill 77? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Finance Committee report. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The report is adopted. To the Appropriations Committee report.
Yes, sir. Appropriations amended this to have a cap of $20,000. And previously, what we did, the introduction of the bill did not have a cap on it, so what we did under appropriations is basically put a cap on this.
All right. Is there any further discussion on the Appropriations Committee report? Going once? Okay. Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senator Crowder.
To the bill?
To the bill.
Thank you, sir. Senate Bill 77 is really somewhat of a simple bill. The bill eliminates state sales tax only on used vehicles purchased with a cap of $20,000 or less. The bill is designed to help the middle economic class own reliable transportation and to have the ability to drive to work, doctor's appointments, go grocery shopping, and meet other daily needs. I'm of belief that the state sales tax on new vehicles satisfies all taxes on the state level. So I believe that this is definitely a bill for the middle class, and I think with the new car escalation in price makes it harder to buy used vehicles at a value, and I think it puts a burden on our lower middle and economic class. So I think it's high time that we actually did something specifically for that class of people, whether it be middle or lower economical. I don't believe it hurts new car sales. I believe that those that buy new cars will continue to buy new, but yet it'll open up an avenue for the middle and lower class to actually own that car that we need so desperately in our vast eastern and northern and rural areas. So I think it's a very good bill. And this is one of those few bills that I was not approached to do this. This is something I've been thinking about doing on my own for some time for that class of people. And I think it helps them. And I think it's something that is needed in the state. And I would ask for your support on it. Thank you.
Senator Court.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I admire my colleague from the Arkansas Valley's desire to lessen the burden on people who are in struggling economic situations. But this bill will reduce the revenue for this year's budget, this 18-19 budget, by $74 million. And we just passed a balanced budget about a week ago. And I'd be interested if any of the JBC members could tell me how we are going to make up this $74 million when we've passed a balanced budget, because this would put it seriously out of whack. And so I'm just curious where this money is going to come from to make up this difference when we already have a balanced budget.
Senator Crowder.
Well, I'm not with the JBC, but I would like to attempt to answer that. I think if you, like anyone else, if you put money in someone's pocket, they are going to spend that. And I believe that the people would know better how to spend their money than government. And I think that money will come back into the coffers rather quickly. And I think anytime that we can actually, you know, the thing about it, we talk about doing something for the middle class continuously. Now's the opportunity to do so. So I think it's an important bill, and it's not about taking money out of state government, because the economy actually would backfill that. But I think it's, you know, I think it's needed for the state. I think it's needed for the direction that we as government should be going, and therefore I would still support that. Thank you.
Senator Court.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, this isn't about whether or not the people in who are going to benefit from this can spend their money well or not well. This is about the services that they won't be receiving. That's it in a nutshell. $77 million pays for a heck of a lot of state services, schools, roads, because we put in so much money in this budget for roads, and health services and human services, disabled services. 77 million is a bucket load of money, and there is no way, after we have already balanced the budget, that we can make up for this money, regardless of whether or not we are sympathetic to the notion that these people could use this money themselves. It simply won't make sense with the budget we just passed. I urge a no vote.
Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My colleague from Denver asks a good question. You know, she basically says, you know, how are we going to, how is government going to deal with a potential shortfall? And this may be an unusual answer in this building to actually hear, let alone to act on, but maybe government could spend less. Just a thought. And also, to my good colleague from Denver, I think the good senator from Alamosa made a great point. If money is given back to the people will actually act on their own benefit to either spend that money to invest it in businesses or to send their children to college, whatever it might be. That money does not go away. That money is recycled within the economy. The average recycling, or the average factor that you can use for money that goes back to individuals and families in the economy, we've seen that that at least has a multiplying effect, potential multiplying effect of 3 to 1, versus government, which is at best 1.5 to 1. So if we are actually going to invest money for the benefit of the people of Colorado, and actually even for the benefit of government and services, it is always the best idea to invest it back where it began, with the people that actually made the money. So urge an aye vote on this bill.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, I urge a no vote on Senate Bill 18077. $74 million is just something we cannot afford to do. $74 million. Just think about the investments that we could make in our schools, in our roads, in our infrastructure. $74 million. This is not the right way to exempt sales tax for buying a used vehicle. Vote no.
Senator Merrifield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one word, 1,850. 2 words, teachers.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 77? Senator Crowder.
All I can say, this is a bill for the middle class, and we continually talk about the middle class, and I would ask for your support. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 77? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 77. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 77 is adopted. Assistant Majority Leader Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we lay over Senate Bill 230 till Thursday, April 19th.
Mr. Carpenter, please. The motion before the body is to lay over Senate Bill 230. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of Senate Bill 61.
Senate Bill 61 by Senator Sonnenberg and Grantham, and concerning a reduction of the state income tax rate.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 61 and the committee report on appropriations. I believe that's the only one.
I believe you're correct. To the Appropriations Committee report.
Appropriations report just did the update on the Department of Revenue. The appropriation clause asked for an aye vote.
Senator Sonberg, did you move it?
Yes.
Okay.
Did I? If I didn't, I moved I moved both the appropriations report and the
Okay.
bill.
Is there any further discussion on the Appropriations Committee report and Amendment L002? Oh, okay. All right. Is there any further discussion on the Appropriations Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senator Sonnenberg.
Amendment on the desk.
Oh, Mr. Carpenter, please read Amendment L002.
Amendment L002, Senate Bill 61 by Senator Sonnenberg.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L002. What happened, members, the amendment actually had the language of L002, but it got left off of the committee report. So all we're doing is adding what the actual amendment said. Ask for your aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on L002? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L002. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. L002 is adopted. Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now we're on the bill. Members, this is a 0.2% cut in our income taxes. This year, we have been blessed by a $1.3 billion surplus. $300 million or so of that has come from the federal tax cuts and the incentive there. We shouldn't keep that as government. We should allow the people that actually paid that tax to utilize that tax and spend it as they see fit to stimulate an economy even better. That's why this is important. If we had any kind of fiscal restraint in this building, it might be a different story. But this is about returning money to the taxpayers, and I ask for your aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 61? Senator Court.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, again, this is another bill that would totally throw a balanced budget out of whack beyond belief. We balanced the budget last week, and now we're talking about taking $365 million out of this budget to do, whatever, just to reduce our income tax rate so that the people of Colorado, as my good friend from Sterling says, will have the money in their pockets. But they will not have schools, roads. They will not have human services and health care. They will not have the services that the state provides for them with the budget that we passed balanced a week ago. This would put a gazillion-dollar hole, a $365 million hole in that balanced budget. Over 3 years, it would cost $920 million. Friends, Colorado has one of the lowest, of all the states that have income tax, one of the lowest income tax rates in the nation at only 4.63. This is an extremely fiscally irresponsible bill, in my mind. It will put our budget in serious jeopardy, and I urge a no vote. The people of Colorado want and need services. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 61? Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colleagues, I encourage a no vote on this bill. According to the fiscal note, it will mean that we have $190 million less in fiscal year 2017-2018, that's the current year, and $374 roughly $375 million less for 1819. The state budget, the balanced budget, passed this chamber on a vote of 30-4. So my question for the sponsors of this bill is, where are you going to take $375 million from? Should it come from transportation? Should it come from education? Colleagues, I think it's irresponsible for us to pass a bill out of this chamber when we've already established a balanced budget that is funding the priorities that Colorado residents have asked us to prioritize. This bill will completely throw our budget out of whack. And so that for that reason, I ask for a no vote on Senate Bill 61.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in opposition to Senate Bill 61 and want to chat about a couple of education pieces, a little bit of a history lesson, a little bit of a civics lesson. So, history lesson. State of Colorado in the late 90s cut the income tax rate. Within 2 years after that cut, and at the time there was a surplus, it was being returned to the taxpayers. And within 2 years after that, this body in the House and the governor had some really, really, really tough decisions to make and cuts to make to K-12 schools, to higher ed, to health care, to our public health system, to our public infrastructure. All of those things were cut in the next few years after the late 90s income tax cut. It's really easy to cut the income tax rate when times are good, but here in Colorado, when the belts get tightened and our schools are being underfunded again, our higher ed is being cut, our healthcare system is being cut, it's a little more difficult to go the other way. The other piece I want to talk about, civics lesson. Unlike Washington, D.C., we actually have to balance our budget here in Colorado. And for those of you who missed it the last couple of weeks in the budgeting process that we went through, where the House had a week with the budget, we had a week with the budget, and our Constitution says we have to balance our budget. 30 of us voted for that balanced budget. That is what we are constitutionally constrained to do here in Colorado. Again, unlike Washington, D.C., where they don't have to do a balanced budget, we do. A very quick look at this fiscal note on this bill. And throwing our budget that we just passed completely out of whack. Again, what our Constitution says that we must do. So I have a couple of questions for the sponsors of this bill. Number one, how many lanes of highway, miles, how many miles of highway are we not going to be able to maintain by cutting $374 million in the next fiscal year? How many teachers do we have to lay off because we are going to be out of balance by $374 million? And what are we going to cut out of the budget that we just passed to the tune of $374 million? So just curious as to those, if I could get answers on those three questions, I think the people of Colorado would be interested to know. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, colleagues, we've heard the term outrage over budget. Outraged. I'm not outraged, frankly. I'm rather amused. We just went through a budget cycle and a budget process on the long bill. Let's talk about what was actually run as far as amendments by possibly some that might be outraged by this bill. This side of the aisle proposed, and along with the House, Democrats proposed over almost $640 million in amendments to a budget that was supposed to be basically balanced. Where's the outrage? Hey, but you're not alone, colleagues, because this side of the aisle proposed almost $56 million to put the budget out of balance. We can talk outrage, but frankly, the people that are really outraged are the people that are not in this building, because it's their money that we're spending. Bipartisan amendments proposed, that was another $130 million. We can talk about outrage. So I'm not going to be outraged, but I will ask the sponsor a question that I think is important, because we heard about how everything that we do, oh my gosh, we're not going to have health care, we're not going to have roads and bridges, we're not going to have teachers and education and everything else. So to my colleague, who is the sponsor of this bill, which I do support, what is that giant percentage of the budget that we're talking about that is in question here?
Senator Sonnenberg.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. That's a great question. In a $30 billion budget, this tax cut represents about 1.25%. 1.25%. So instead of a $1.3 billion increase this year, it would figure out to about a $930 million increase. Still an increase of just shy of $1 billion. Isn't that money better off in the taxpayers' hands? Let me address another thing that I added in the ledge deck of this bill, just to be clear. This legislature made an agreement with the governor last year that we would have a 2% across-the-board cut in those agencies. That didn't happen either. I don't like being lied to. This was part of last year. We have the money to actually accommodate that agreement, and we should actually give it back to the taxpayer. That's all we're asking here, 1.25%. Senator from Jefferson County, thank you for that question, 1.25%. Ask for your aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Fields. Senator Court.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We need some clarification here. The $30 billion to which the good senator from Sterling referred is the entire budget, including federal funds, cash funds, reappropriated funds, et cetera, et cetera. So the actual budget that this would affect is the general fund, which is $11 billion. $11 billion is not $30 billion. And this tax cut would affect only the general fund, which is $11 billion. Therefore, that percentage is wildly inaccurate. The actual percentage of the general fund that this would be is, did you figure it? All right, somebody else is figuring it right now. So that it will be a different amount because it is of the general fund of the $11 billion that this would be taken from. The other thing is that my recollection of the bill we passed last year was that the 2% cut was requested. It wasn't a mandate in that bill. And I believe that some of the agencies did make those proposals, but it was not a requirement. So I want to be very careful that we make certain that we are not throwing around things like being lied to, because that was part of it as a suggestion, not as a mandate. So let's be very careful with facts.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Of the 11 billion is 3.4%. 3.4%. 378 million divided by 11 billion is 3.4%. Tomato. The money goes back to the people. And let me refresh your memory. It was a mandate. The mandate was that the governor's budget to the Joint Budget Committee would be submitted, or the governor's budget would be submitted with those 2% cuts. Now, the Joint Budget Committee did not have to adhere to that. That is what, not the mandate. But the governor's office was supposed to do the 2%. They didn't do it. They just flat ignored it. It's a combination of these things is why we can't be trusted with taxpayer dollars to increasing spending on a regular basis and spend like drunken sailors. That's why I want to give the money back to the people of Colorado. Ask for your yes vote.
Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I urge a no vote on Senate Bill 61, and here's why. First of all, we had a member from Jefferson County come up here and talk about how he was outraged, just outraged at the amount of money that we were spending as it relates to the amendments. And he had some figures in reference to how much the House spent, and then he also had another figure in reference to how much the Senate spent. At the end of the day, we have a budget process. And as members, we get an opportunity to draft those amendments. Some make it, some don't. But that's our process. At the end of the day, we pass a balanced budget. That's the process. Now, here we come with Senate Bill 61. And what Senate Bill 61 wants to do, and I'm quite sure you've read it, this bill intends to reduce income taxes, the rate, from 4.63% to 4.43% for 2018. Basically, what that means for the period, budget period 2018-19, $365 million, and then in 19-20, $384.2 million. We can't afford that. When you think about the future of the state of Colorado and how we need to plan for the future of Colorado, we need to think about the departments that we're funding. That money, that $365 million will impact our schools. It impacts higher education. It impacts funding for human services. It impacts funding for our judicial branch. It impacts funding for our public safety. It impacts funding for our local affairs and public health and transportation. We're asking them to take a hit of this huge amount, $365 million. How can we plan for our future and build our economy when we want to cut? Everywhere I go, there's an increase in prices on milk, gas, housing, and we are expected to pass this bill thinking that we can afford to cut when we know that our population in the state of Colorado is growing. And here we want to reduce our taxes at the expense of our future. I think it was already mentioned that Colorado is already the 13th lowest state-based taxes. We're already at the bottom. And here we want to cut it at the tunes of millions and millions and millions of dollars. Colorado is doing well economically, but without our tax rate, we're going to fall behind in so many areas. Changing the tax rates takes us away from our ability to invest in the future. And we're going to be missing opportunities as it relates to what we need to do to prepare our economy for the future and planning for the future. This tax reduction, as it relates to tax income, is not the right way to move Colorado forward. I urge a no vote on this bill.
Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I wanted to reiterate, and I believe that did some double checking with my colleagues over here on this side of the aisle to make sure that I didn't say I was outraged. Actually, my words were others were outraged. Possibly people at home that are paying their taxes are often outraged with what we do. I was amused. That was the word. So to my good colleague from Aurora, I was amused. But let's get to something more serious. It's actually, colleagues, a division between how we look at opportunity. My colleague from Aurora states that if we cut back on a tax rate, somehow that hurts our state. The idea that a higher tax rate helps our state is frankly preposterous. Otherwise, we'd all be wanting to move to California, New York, and Illinois. And I'm not sure how many people in here want the state of Colorado to look like California, New York, or Illinois. That giant sinking sound that we hear from those states, where people are actually leaving those states in droves because of their tax rates. Colleagues, we also heard about the idea of people having to go out and buy things and actually fulfill their hopes and dreams. Do we really believe that fulfilling their hopes and dreams requires a higher tax rate to take more money from them? That seems unusual to me, too. It's about allowing people to keep more of what they earn. It is a divide that we see often, and it's an important divide. It's something that we debate, and policies represent those. Do we believe that people who go out and work hard for a living and earn money should be able to keep a little bit more of what they earn? Or do we believe that the benevolent government, in its infinite wisdom, let alone the fact that, oh my gosh, if we actually cut something, maybe waste and fraud and other things and possibly programs that are not helpful anymore could possibly be cut also, as people do in their budgets? Do we feel that that's impossible? Colleagues, that's the question. I believe allowing individuals to keep more of what they earn and invest in the things that they find that are important for their families is extremely important, and it is the best policy that we can have as a governing body. I urge an aye vote.
Senator Lindberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I come down in support of this measure, and I wanted to explain it from a couple of different perspectives. One is, as a member of the Joint Budget Committee, who's spent several months now working through balancing the budget, and Chairman of Appropriations Committee, and we're right in the thick of it right now, ensuring that we don't overspend what money that we have projected to come in. I'm still in support of this bill for a couple of reasons. The first is, I've been down here long enough to know what we're doing with this bill. We're trying to say this is the right path. I also know that the House is of a different mind. They don't think it's the right path. I'm certain of that. You know, maybe I'm presuming some intent here, but I believe that that we're mostly battling on what's right from a philosophical standpoint right now, and that's an appropriate thing for us to do. And I'll also say this, that if I'm wrong, and if they concur and the governor signs this, I will very, very willingly go through all of the heavy lifting it's going to take to make sure that by July 1st we have a budget that balances. No question. And here's my main point. And that is, I'm not down here to control the people of Colorado. I'm down here to serve the people of Colorado. And the primary reason, or the primary direction we should head, is securing their God-given rights. That's fundamental to the fundamental document for our nation's founding. The governments exist to secure those rights. And the rights are not for more government programs and for subsidies and for helping here and there and everywhere. I believe we've gotten out of control. You know, let's take it down to just the household level, if you will. In a family, in a two-parent family, almost without exception, mom and dad both work. And if you were to take apart their incomes and line it up against all of the taxes they pay, property taxes, gas taxes, vehicle taxes, income taxes, both at the state and the federal level, and I could go on and on and on with all of the taxes that are there. If you were to bundle that up and then look at the incomes for both of them, you'd find out that one of them is probably just paying the tax bill. That's it. When mom and dad both work and one of them is just paying the tax bill with their income, that's too much in a free society. Absolutely too much. That's my philosophy. Now, I'm sure some will come down here and say, it's not enough. We need more out of the people. Well, the people have had so much taken out of them, and I can tell you that the people from Senate District 15 up in Larimer County that have sent me have given me very clear marching orders. I am not here to grow the government pie. I am here to preserve the freedoms and the liberties for the individual citizens and the families in the state of Colorado. And that's why I think this is a good debate and discussion we have here. I'm not so convinced that it's going to catch on to the state policy today, but I'm very willing to go down that road if we get there today. I should hope that someday we will be of one mind that the tax burden is too heavy for the people of Colorado, and we need to find ways to lessen that burden. And that's why this bill is a good start. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 61? Senator Kagan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I welcome this opportunity to address the Senate on really what is a philosophical question. The senator from unincorporated Jefferson County articulately expressed the thought that we need to give Coloradans a tax cut so that they can fulfill their hopes and dreams. Now, I can tell you, members, my constituents, from my conversations with them, I can tell you that their hopes and dreams are for a transportation system that is unclogged. They hope for and dream about a day when their school system to which they send their children is one of the finest in the world. They hope and dream that their water will continue to be clean, but that their public safety system, their criminal justice system, will be a world-class criminal justice system, which is not scrimping by and saving. They hope and dream that one day they might live in a state where those who fall into drug abuse and therefore antisocial behavior get the treatment they need, where people who are sick and in an elderly state are cared for in a decent manner, and they hope and dream for a society where their disputes will be resolved by a court system that is well-funded and fair and impartial and makes good decisions. They hope and dream for clean water. They hope and dream for clean air, a good environment. They hope and dream for a business environment where they can know that they will be treated fairly, and those bad actors who are not treating them fairly will be brought to account. Those are the hopes and dreams of Coloradans, my friend. And those are the hopes and dreams that can be fulfilled if we make sure together as a society that our collective hopes and dreams are addressed. So let's not abandon the effort of making Colorado the wonderful place it could be, and that we hope and dream it could be. So let's vote no on this bill, which dashes those hopes and dreams.
Senator Merrifield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just taking a few notes. I'll try to skip around on them, but from what's been said, first off, I just want to remind the members of this body, hopefully, that they realize that there is an adjoining neighboring state, Kansas. It's gone down this route. Frankly, they didn't have many routes left after they went through this slashing of income tax. They closed hundreds of schools. They practically went bankrupt, and they had to reverse direction so that they could cover just the basic services for their citizens of Kansas. Let's learn something from Kansas and not go down that pothole-filled route. Secondly, there was something said about God-given rights, and I don't know how that was brought into this, but I do remember, since my dad was a Baptist preacher, being told about rendering unto Caesar that which is Caesar, which belongs to Caesar. So just remember that if we're going to bring in God or the Bible. And thirdly, we're not growing anything. No, we're not talking about raising taxes. We're just talking about maintaining the opportunity to address some of the backlog of indebtedness we have to the citizens of Colorado, and specifically, how about to the students of Colorado with the millions and millions of dollars we owe to the BS factor. And if the assumption is this is going to die in the House anyway, I'm curious as to what the realistic purpose behind the bill is. And finally, 4,750 teachers the first year, 9,350 teachers the second year. And I remember, I'm amused. I have to say I'm amused. I remember the members on this side of the aisle that poo-pooed and poked fun at one of the amendments to give a $5,000 a year bonus to teachers in Colorado, and they were outraged at the amount of money that would cost. That's overwhelmed by the amount of money this bill would cost. Get your calculator out, figure the figures, and vote no.
Senator Court.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. During the recession, some people in Colorado Springs realized that the city was cutting funding for lights on streets because they didn't have the money because of the recession. So they were cutting the lights on the streets. And some people got together and said, well, we need our street lights. So let's pool our money so we can turn the street lights back on. That's what taxes are for. That's called the common good. I teach my students a formula. Taxes plus fees equals services. That's called the common good. So when you turn on the faucet, you get clean water. And when you flush the toilet, you know it goes away. And when you call 911, you know you're going to get help. This is called the common good. That's what taxes are for in a civil society. If we want anarchy, if we want the kind of society where people just all have their own and try to deal with things on their own, we're going to get anarchy. Many of you probably remember who Tom Sutherland was. He was the professor from Fort Collins who was a hostage in Beirut. He was chained to a wall for 6.5 years. He didn't see the sun, 6.5 years. And when he came home, he said, "It's a privilege to pay taxes in this country. Let me tell you what it's like to be somewhere they don't pay taxes. Anyone who wants to can grab you off the street, chain you to a wall in a basement for 6.5 years." Folks, taxes are the price we pay for a civil society. If we reduce them dramatically, which this bill would do, we will have a less civil society. It's not what I want, and my dear friend Tom Sutherland, who died last fall, would not want it either. And he spent 6.5 years in a country that was not civil. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 61? Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And many of the comments that I was going to make were just made by my predecessor here, but I want to pick up on that because I want to speak about a real-life story, and that is our neighboring state, the state of Kansas. And there was a belief that, oh, let's cut taxes. Let's just keep cutting taxes. Well, they did, and they cut services. Schools were needing to be closed. They had to cut numbers of days that children could be in school. Roads were not being repaired. They were not able to continue offering the services that were necessary. And the Supreme Court had to step in and say, you're not doing what you need to do for the people of Kansas. Their income tax is 4.6%. They tried to lower it, tried to gut it, tried to say, we don't need money, we don't need to pay for services. We'll just let people put it in their own pockets. They can make those decisions. And the federal government had to step in. And they ended up, the legislature had to continue meeting over and over. Democrats and Republicans had to come together and say, this plan is not working. Well, now they have a new governor, and they have been able to work forward in making those amends and making some of them happen. But when you bleed a state, and small rural towns are closing down because they can't stay open, they're giving away free land so people can live there and try to bring people in. That's no way to run a government. Unfortunately, we equate, or some people equate the word tax with something evil. Tax is goods and services for all of us. And that is what makes a government and makes a community and makes a state operate. So when we say we don't need to, we can go back and now we can cut some of the things that we've already passed with a balanced budget for this year. That is being, I believe, disingenuous in terms of backpedaling the things and the process that we've gone through, both in the Senate and in the House, to make amends. The second thing that I want to really bring up and focus on is the fact that if we were so lucrative with everything and we were really funding properly all goods and services for the state of Colorado, great, then let's come back and reevaluate. Friends, we have school districts that are going to 4-day weeks, 4-day weeks, to save money, to save transportation, to save on the public service and utilities. Is that the way we want to operate? I don't think so. Because then you look at unintended circumstances from that, and you think about where are those children on day 5 when both parents are at work? So you talk about out-of-pocket money, save that money, well, you're going to pay for it in another way. So you can't rob from Peter to pay Paul and think that this is the answer. We have worked together in this Senate, in this body, to pass a balanced budget. The House has worked together. Our JBC came together and said, this is what we are going to offer for this year. We passed legislation last spring, Senate Bill 267, that said we want to reach out, we want to help our rural areas, we want to make sure that we are looking at things in a broad scope. That is the way we problem solve. To now come back after the fact and say, oh, by the way, now we're going to cut and we're going to say, oh, people, we're going to give you this amount of money and you spend it however you want. I'm a believer in the common good. I'm a believer in a good for the whole. That's why I sponsor legislation for the rurals as well as for the urbans. It is the great state of Colorado. It is not just about Aurora that I represent. It is about the whole. It is about services I may never take advantage of. But when we support the disabled, when we support the elderly, which I'm fast approaching, when we support all of those different goods and services to a wide spectrum of people, that is the common good. That's how we have a strength of our state. When people feel like their services and they don't count, that we'll cut that because it doesn't apply to a certain number of people, that's wrong in my mind. It is making sure that we do what we have promised the people, and that is we will collaborate, we will listen, we will have conversations and bring to the table different perspectives to try to do the best for the citizens' money that is all of ours, for the services that take care of all of us for the state of Colorado. I urge a no vote on Senate Bill 61, and again, I'm proud to be a Coloradan. I'm proud to stand strong for the whole of our state. Thank you.
Senator Crowder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know there's been a lot of talk on Kansas. But what Kansas did was basically take the owner-operated businesses and take that tax rate down to zero. That's not what this bill is about. What we're talking about doing is reducing it by 0.2%. So if you're going to argue, it's got to be apples to apples, but there's no comparison to what Kansas did and what this bill is attempting to do. And I'm also proud to be a Coloradan, fifth generation. And I think we should owe it. We owe it to the people of the state of Colorado to try and help them out. And, you know, the forecast has been remarkable, and there's no reason for that forecast to not remain remarkable. So I think that I think it's a good, solid bill. Thank you.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just close up here. We've had a good discussion. I appreciate that discussion. But let me talk about some of the things that were said. I'll start with most recent senator from Aurora talking about you're going to pay one way or another. They'll pay another way. From my perspective, it's always better to have the people that pay the taxes determine how they want to spend that money. If they want to pay in this way, fine. If they want to pay for this service, fine. I don't want to have government tell them what service they need to own. Then there was talk about anarchy. Well, let's look at the numbers as we talk about how this would create anarchy. Currently, this year, the $1.3 billion increase was an 11.8% increase in our general fund. And yes, I'll use the general fund. 11.8%. This removes that, lowers that 3.4%, which means we still have an 8.3% increase in spending this year in our budget, the general fund. So what does that equate to? In our long bill, we spent $450 million roughly in roads, $150 million over and above the baseline on education, that's $600 million. That still leaves a little over $300 million for your pet projects. I think an 8.3% increase in the income of this state in the general fund is more than adequate to continue the services that we already perform. That's why I would ask for your yes vote.
Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was hoping that one of the JBC members could come up and address what would happen to the conference committee report on the budget that we voted on last week if this bill were to pass both chambers. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 61? Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, just to answer the question from my colleague from Vail, the conference committee pales the total cost of the conference committee and all the amendments added through both the House and Senate pale in comparison to what the general fund reductions are in this bill. So essentially, forget about any of the amendments that were added in the House or the Senate or adopted in the conference committee, because we'd have to go beyond those and we'd actually have to further cut things in our budget if this bill were to pass.
Any further discussion? Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just want to wrap up with a couple of things. So what we were told is that the difference between a 1.25% reduction and a 3.63 reduction, we were told tomato, tomato. Well, that's tens of millions of dollars, not tomatoes and tomatoes. What we're talking about here in Colorado is a balanced budget. We have to have a balanced budget. And a lot of folks have come down here and talked about that number for next year's budget, having to cut $374 million out of next year's budget. Well, one thing not very many people have mentioned is this year's budget. This year's budget, which ends June 30th, we would have to cut $190 million out of this year's budget. So some folks brought up the budgeting process and the budget, the long bill and the process we go through. In my 12 years down here at the Capitol, I've been through 13 different budget processes, and every single time you run an amendment on the budget through the regular budgeting process, we are told you have to say where that money is coming from. So if we want to increase it over here, we have to say where it is over there. That way, our JBC members can come out with a balanced budget once we go through the process. But every single time you run an amendment to the balanced budget that we're doing, you have to say where that money is coming from. We have yet to hear where is that $190 million in this year's budget, not even the budget we just passed last week, the budget we passed last year. And we did a whole bunch of supplemental bills earlier this session. $190 million cut from this year's budget, and we only have a couple of months left. Is that 3 months left? We have to cut almost $200 million from this budget. Where are we going to cut? We've been asking over and over again, where are we going to cut from this year's budget and next year's budget? Where are we going to cut? Is it the 4,000 teachers? Is it the 10,000 miles of road? Where are we going to cut? It's a simple question. And a fiscally conservative bill, a fiscally responsible bill, and a fiscally responsible Senate would say where the cuts are going to come from. Now, many of us have been accused of wanting more, of trying to grow government and wanting more. Only in Colorado can you ask for some fiscal responsibility about where the cut's going to come from and be accused of trying to grow government. That only happens in Colorado. Because Colorado is the only state where we violate Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution. We were told that we're supposed to be down here protecting our constituents' God-given rights. So I'm curious, if this bill has something to do with my constituents' God-given rights, at exactly what point are my constituents' God-given rights between a 4.43% income tax and a 4.63% income tax? If somebody is getting some divine knowledge as to exactly where the income tax could be so that that I can vote to protect God-given rights, I would love to know that. Again, hopefully for the last time, I'm simply going to ask, if this bill were to pass and become law, where is the $190 million out of this year's budget going to come from? Just a general, we do that all the time here at the Well, is when something isn't specifically written in a bill, but we come down here and say what our intent is. Where is the intent of this money coming from? Is it out of transportation? Is it out of education? Is it out of health care? Just give us some idea of where the intent for the $190 million out of this year's budget is supposed to come from, and where the $374 million out of next year's budget that we just passed, that balanced budget that we just passed, where is that going to come from? Just a little explanation of the intent of the sponsors as to where we are going to cut. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Tate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make a casual observation. I read not too long ago about the success of the soda tax, I believe in California, or maybe a particular large municipality in California. And the soda tax was successful in reducing the activity of consumption of soda or soft drinks. And I just wonder why some of us here think it's different when it comes to human productivity. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 61? Senator Lundberg.
Oh, yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just very briefly, we heard reference to Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution, which, of course, guarantees us a Republican form of government. And small r, of course. I like the large r as well. But the Constitution guarantees the small r, Republican form of government, and I don't think that should be left unsaid, because the statement was that we're in violation of that. Now let me refer you to the Colorado Constitution, Article 5, Section 1. Pretty simple, couple of sentences. The legislative power of the state shall be vested in the General Assembly, consisting of a Senate and a House of Representatives, both to be elected by the people. Actually, it's just one sentence. I'll stop right in the middle there and to explain that the contention, as I understand it, is that because the taxpayer's Bill of Rights, which is part of the Colorado Constitution, what is that, Article 10, Section, I forgot the reference, but it's there, I assure you, limits our power on raising taxes, that somehow that's a violation of a Republican form of government. But let me remind you that the Constitution of the state of Colorado, which was accepted as a Republican form of government, small r, goes on to say within that first sentence of Article 5, Section 1, but the people reserve to themselves the power to propose laws and amendments to the Constitution and to enact or reject the same at the polls independent of the General Assembly, and also reserve power at their own option to approve or reject at the polls any act or item, section, or part of any act of the General Assembly. They're pretty clear. The people of Colorado very clearly stated that a Republican, small r, form of government includes the people's right to supersede the authority of the General Assembly, and that's what the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights is all about. And they understood from 1876 onward that they were in charge, not us, that we are their representatives. And in the case of this particular legislation, we are following at least the charge that I was given from my district, which is to keep a handle on taxes. And if you can lower them, please do. And this bill does. Please vote yes.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 61? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 61. All of those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 61 is passed.
I think we heard that.
System Majority Leader Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we lay over House Bill 18-1270 to Thursday, April 19th.
Okay. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of. Apologize. You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1270 is laid over. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of Senate Bill 228.
Senate Bill 228 by Senator Hill and Representative Van Winkle concerning improving school choice in traditional schools of a school district.
Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 228. Colleagues, very briefly, Senate Bill 228. I don't think any of us have a whole lot of doubt as to what's going to happen to this bill. But there's two main components of the bill that I want to highlight, and I think we need to continue to highlight that we need some discussion on. We enjoyed discussion in Education Committee as well on this. First component of the bill is transportation and addressing what, right now in Colorado, a district has to give permission to allow an adjacent district to pick up students and take them to a school that they have choiced into. That is the main contentious aspect of this bill with school districts. I understand that, but I also think we need to highlight for many of the people who are here in Colorado, who are living in Colorado, who recognize that there's a district that does not have all the services that they love, and they want to go to a high school in an adjacent district or whatnot. If that district, if it works out between both of them, that the school district where they're attending is able to send a bus and pick them up, I think they should be allowed to do it. We have a barrier right now preventing students from being able to choice within the public school system to the best extent possible. And then the second issue, and I think we've got more agreement on this, although less agreement on the specifics, is so many different schools and so many different districts are wrestling with a timeline and application process all for what it looks like to choice into one of the schools here in Colorado. And to put this number in context, about 150,000 students this year will choice into a separate traditional public school. And so we're looking for a way to standardize that timeline, to standardize the application, to make it easier on districts, to make it easier on parents and easier on students. And we did hear in committee that's certainly something we could consider doing. My concern is that we don't have enough time to get those details exactly right. But I do want to highlight this. I want to continue to push on it and hopefully get us some momentum for solving this problem. So ask for your support, recognizing, like I said, that there's very little doubt as to the final status of this bill through this process.
Senator Todd.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Chair. And it was an interesting debate in the Education Committee in terms of just kind of hearing what support was or wasn't for that. we heard from both Sheridan and Inglewood, which are both small districts that are represented by my good friend from Cherry Hills, and they said we already do this. We already are able to collaborate and figure out what kinds of services, because they're both small districts that are really struggling. And so sometimes it's a matter of, instead of both districts offering the same program, maybe an IB program or maybe a career tech program, whatever that might be, that they could collaborate and they can figure that out. For us to intervene or have the wherewithal of saying, well, this is a statewide, someone made the suggestion, well, what if a student that lives in the metro area wants to go to a rural area and maybe participate in FFA or some of the different opportunities that might be unique to them? I personally cannot imagine any rural district having extra money to pay for transporting a student from Denver to Ray or to another area throughout the state for being able to do that. So I guess my concern is, if this is an issue that two districts want to work on and want to collaborate on, I think they can do that. I don't believe we need to put this in state statute to say, okay, districts, you can pay for a student to come from another district to your district. I think it also brings about some challenges, and I did bring up the issue about sports, and with CHASA, and I know our CHASA board is pretty tight in terms of allowing for a student to transfer from one district to another because they want to play for a certain coach or something along that line. And CHASA is pretty tight with that. But I also know that there are appeals that are made based on it being an academic reason for changing as opposed to the athletic. And so sometimes that comes about. I think that the idea of, if a student chooses to go to a different district, we have made that open enrollment very possible in the state of Colorado. But I think in terms of one district paying for another student to be transported from who knows where, envelops an additional charge for that district, number one. And number two, if that is necessary, let those districts figure it out. But I don't believe this is a statewide issue that needs to go into statute. I believe local control can take care of it, and I believe that individual districts can work together to solve those challenges. I urge a no vote on Senate Bill 228. Thank you.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and unfortunately, that's not the way it works in rural Colorado. We have districts fighting to try and keep as many students as they can from going to other schools because they know it impacts their funding. And so what we have is intersections of county roads and highways where people drive from one town to get inside the other district because the bus will actually pick them up inside the district. They can't actually go into another district and pick those students up. For example, Fleming. There's a ranch on Highway 6 that's just inside Fleming School District. Good friend, Brandon Spector, owns that ranch, and he allows people from Sterling to drive out there because it's about halfway between Sterling and Fleming. So they drive 10 miles twice a day, park there at the ranch, wait for the bus, and then 12 to 15 kids get on that bus to go to Fleming schools. And then interestingly enough, down south, there's 4 or 5 kids from Fleming that want to go to Sterling School District. And so they park at the corner of County Road 22 and Highway 61, which is in the Sterling District, twice a day, so that they can get on a bus and not have to drive all the way into Sterling. And understand most of these kids, they're still going to ride the bus half hour, 45 minutes, or their parents are going to drive a half hour, 45 minutes, 20, 30, 40 miles. Why would we not allow schools to meet those needs of those students that want to go to those schools? Why do we want to be protectionism? Is that a word? I think, if nothing else, allow these schools to work to try and entice students to go to those districts. And these are public schools, to go to those districts and find a safe place to meet so buses aren't turning on and off of highways, stopped on side roads to load kids, so that these kids and these parents can educate those kids at a school that they want, and the school can actually meet the needs of those kids. That's why I support this bill.
Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to just address that, the question that came to my mind as I just listened to the previous speaker. So basically, buses would be passing each other going from one district to another. I had not heard that before, and so I know we can't address individual speakers, but just for clarification, that basically a bus would come from one district to another district, and if you have students from this district going over here, that basically those buses could be passing each other to go to the other district. Am I clear on that? I just wanted to have clarification.
Senator Songbird.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I suppose that's a possibility for a school like Marino and Sterling, where most of those students there's one main access. The example I gave with Fleming and Sterling was no. Those buses are on entirely different highways and would not meet each other because those districts are so large. One's from the south end of the county, one's from the east end of the county. So, and hopefully what would happen in that scenario, if we allowed this to open up, those schools would get together and say, okay, let's create that efficiency. We will meet you somewhere in between and we will exchange those students or figure that out, but that's not an option now. The option now is you drive your kids, you have 6, 7, 8 vehicles driving down the highway, blizzard, sunshine, rain, it doesn't matter, pulling off into the ranch instead of a bus. I would rather they be on that safe bus and have less vehicles, and dare me to say, reduce the carbon footprint of all those vehicles driving to that ranch.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 228? Going once. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 228 is adopted. Assistant Majority Leader Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
Members, you have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? The ayes have it. We'll rise and report.
Senate will come back to order. Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has met and had a number of bills under consideration. Will the clerk please read the report?
Mr. President, your committee of the whole begs lead reports that in consideration of the following tax bills being second reading thereof makes following recommendations to run. Senate Bill 77 is amended, Senate Bill 61 is amended, Senate Bill 228 passed second read order and gross place on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 235, Senate Bill 230, House Bill 1270 laid over until 4/19/18, retained by place on the calendar.
Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of the report.
Motion before the body is the adoption of the report to the committee of the whole. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, the committee of the whole report is adopted. Senate Bill 77 is amended. Senate Bill 61 is amended. Senate Bill 228 passed on second reading, ordered engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 235, Senate Bill 230, House Bill 1270 laid over until 4/19/18, retaining their place on the calendar. Consideration of resolutions. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read the title of the Senate Resolution 5?
Senate Resolution 5 by Senator Lundberg concerning the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment's proposed rule regulating the assisted living industry in Colorado.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Resolution 5, and I do not ask that it be read at length. I would just like to describe it briefly.
Please continue.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Resolution 5 is concerning the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment's proposed rules regulating the assisted living industry in Colorado. This is the reason for this, that I bring this resolution before the body, is CDPHE is in the final stages of putting in place some regulations that are greatly concerning to many of the small assisted living facilities. And I have had this morning placed on the desk of all of the senators a letter that was written from one such owner and operator of actually 2 assisted living facilities, the smaller ones. These are the more the residential ones. This gentleman identifies himself as from Colorado Springs. And their concern is this may drive them out of business, literally, the regulations. And the resolution, as originally written, asks that the department not put those regulations in place at their board meeting, which is scheduled for tomorrow. However, I have also had some discussions with some of the members of the body here who have a resolution which will amend that down to simply asking that they give the small assisted living residences, that means the facilities with fewer than 20 beds, an additional 4 months to before they implement these rules, begging the department, and that's about all we can do, is beg the department to reconsider some of the more onerous and expensive components of these resolutions. Now, I also have an amendment to that amendment that would essentially lengthen that to 6 months. So that is a brief description of the problem, of the resolution, and of some of the resolutions to the resolution. This would be your time to amend that.
Any further discussion? There is an amendment on the desk. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read Amendment L002?
Amendment L002 to Senate Resolution 5 by Senators Aguilar and Cafalas. Amend printed resolution, page 1, strike lines 1 through 8. Strike.
Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, we move Amendment L002. Members, we had the opportunity this year to hear a bill related to assisted living residences in our state. And I have to tell you that we actually were quite concerned about the inability of our state to provide adequate oversight and review to ensure that there's safety in them. And the bill we heard applied to large and small facilities. And so we were pleased overall to hear about the pathway the Department of Public Health and Environment was taking around these facilities. Because as you can see by the amendment, the complexity of patients being cared for in these non-nursing home facilities continues to increase as our population ages. And in fact, up to, I forgot the number, it's right here on line 18, up to 43% of them have Alzheimer's or some other form of dementia, and 6 out of 10 people with dementia we know on average will wander. And so safety is a real concern. Because our population is aging with so many people expected to be over the age of 60 and 85 in the future, and in fact in these assisted living residencies, 57% of them are over the age of 85. We think that their need is critical, but we need to ensure that if our name is on it as having licensed or certify them, that the people in the facilities are kept safe. And I wanted to share with you a couple of stories that actually did happen in smaller facilities. There's 3 residents in a small 6-bed private pay facility, and they were typically put in bed at 8 at night and not checked again until 8 in the morning, so that in the morning they were found soaked in urine and would get some skin breakdown because of that, and wounds. One of them had wounds on their lower back. There was another resident in a small facility where there were just 16 people in the facility, and this resident had amnesia and dementia. And during the evening, unbeknownst to the staff, the resident left the facility and was found deceased at 2 in the morning outside of the facility. And so, again, these are small facilities, and these kinds of things happen. And so I think that the direction the department is taking is appropriate. The department has held many stakeholder meetings and has taken input and has, even as we speak, recently gone through and made modifications to try and accommodate the needs of some of the smaller assisted living facilities. But I think it's important that we recognize this as our responsibility as a legislature to ensure that these facilities provide safe care for our elderly and vulnerable populations. And so with the amendment, what we are saying is that we do want the Board of Health to adopt the rules. We do want to ask them to delay a little bit further the enforcement of the rules, and to and encourage the Board of Health, the Department of Public Health and Environment, to continue the work they've done on meeting with the small facilities to see what accommodations can be made that both ensure the public is kept safe and are not as much of a burden on them. And so we'd ask for your support for this amendment.
Senator Kafalis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I also rise in support of Amendment L002, and I just want to briefly provide a little bit of context here. My take on this resolution, or this amendment, strike below amendment, is that we're trying to strike a balance between making sure that the people that are being served in these assisted living residences, whether they're small or large, that they're receiving the proper care. And as was stated earlier, we're seeing that people being served have higher acuity levels. They have more complex needs. And so there is a real need to have a proper balance between safety and at the same time acknowledging that the smaller assisted living residences that serve 19 or less individuals, that they have, they've raised legitimate concerns about costs and some of the regulations. And so I think it's important to put that out. I think it's also important to mention that to the credit of the senator from Berthoud, he has been very willing to work with us and try to strike a compromise here. So I'm very grateful for that. Finally, this issue came to my attention before March, the beginning of March, but we had a town hall meeting in Larimer County in Fort Collins on March 10th, and there were about 15 individuals who showed up who specifically wanted to talk about this issue. 5 of those individuals were owners of small assisted living residences in Larimer County, and then the rest were family members that were being served. And so after the town hall meeting, we sat down for over an hour and we discussed some of these issues. And so as a result of being informed of that, we did contact the department. We helped to facilitate a conversation with a lot of folks around the table. I was there. The good senator from Berthoud was there, as well as one of the state reps from Fort Collins. And so we've been trying to facilitate a process here. And then, of course, the resolution appeared, SR 18-005, and based on the discussions, we've come up with this L002, which in our view, and I think all three of us, represents a better balance. It also acknowledges, for example, that we have approximately 660 of these assisted living residences, and 60% of those are serving folks under 20 residents or fewer. And many of those people, 40%, are folks that are on Medicaid. And I see that the good senator from the Joint Budget Committee is over there. He's probably going to speak to a point that in the resolution that I was going to speak to, so I will defer to him when it is his time. I rise in support of L002. Thank you.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Resolution 5 is introduced. I had planned to vote no, but I do come to speak in strong support of Amendment L002. This amendment would allow for more time, but I think elaborates on the importance of assisted living facilities, but also what the Joint Budget Committee did this year to increase the provider rates for these facilities. They will be receiving a 25% provider rate increase, which translates to about $4,700 per year per resident. Obviously, these are folks that had lower than needed provider rates under Medicaid, and we saw the value in increasing those provider rates, but part of increasing those provider rates is also making sure that they are compliant with safety and the proper care of the people, the very vulnerable communities that reside in these facilities. And so, we were happy that we were able to increase the provider rates for this very needed service. But at the same time, we want to make sure that the proper regulations are in place to ensure safety and ensure that everyone is being cared for properly in these facilities. So I encourage your support for Amendment L002.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will try not to belabor the discussion too much. I will reserve just a few comments I want to make once we get through the amendments. But in short, I will support this amendment. I cannot say that I'm fully in agreement with it, but I believe that it has, I trust, reached a reasonable compromise so that the resolution can move forward, and we, the Senate, can say to the Department of Public Health and Environment, please go slow and think very carefully on what you are doing to the smaller facilities. Again, I will support this amendment, and then I will ask for a minor modification to the amendment with a further amendment.
Senator Martinez-Humenick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I rise in support of this amendment, L002. I was a part of these meetings, and these meetings have been going on for 24 months, and they actually started months before that. The small assisted living facilities were a part of those meetings. However, the representatives only attended 40% of the time, and there were monthly meetings for 24 months where they spent ample time going over this, hearing everybody's concerns. So this is the first complete review redraft since the original rules were put into effect in 1986. And there were a total of 36 meetings, approximately 5,200 plus volunteer hours that were documented by the members of this committee that were there. The public could have attended, and if you couldn't be there, you had the option to call in by phone, which is what I did when I had conflicts. There was HCPF representation for this entire time, this 2-year stakeholder process. They believe that Medicaid patients, this group, decided that Medicaid patients should have the same level of services as the private paid clients. Facilities Guidelines Institute standards are the national standards designed to preserve the quality of life in these facilities. The department has responded to specific concerns that were raised by the stakeholders, and I was at those meetings. Those were addressed. Instead of meeting the FGI parking requirements, our assisted living facilities are authorized to meet local zoning requirements, which is whatever their city or community or county has put in place. Facilities with 10 beds or less do not have to meet the elevator or bathroom requirements that are in the new rules. And what I wanted to just let you know is that we've had some complaints. The facility size of 19 beds or less, with a number of beds totaling 4,001. Facilities with 20 beds or more had 18,480. So we've got complaints here. What most people don't realize is that the only thing that is licensed right now currently is the building itself. Everything else is done by rule. So our assisted living residents in Colorado are now becoming older, and as they age, are having more complex healthcare needs than we had 30 years ago. 57% of these assisted living residents in Colorado are over the age of 85, with 25% 75 to 85 years old. 50% may have cardiovascular disease, 43% Alzheimer's or some form of dementia, and that is increasing. 28% have been diagnosed with depression, and 15% have been diagnosed with diabetes. So with the numbers that I just gave you, the small facilities demonstrate double the rate of complaints per bed than the larger facilities do. The small facilities were involved in these conversations. We had many, many members from the Alzheimer's Association. I can actually go through the list and tell you who's on the committee. There were 34 to 35 people that showed up every single time that were actually on the committee, as well as all of the stakeholders that these new rules will affect. So there has been time, very careful, thoughtful process in the engagement of the stakeholders for the last 36 months on revamping these rules. So the 4 months for implementing this is plenty. It doesn't need to be any more than that. The fact that the small facilities were at a town hall meeting in one specific locality, that's fine, but they had the opportunity to have their voice heard, either in person or by phone. So they were able to be a part of these committee meetings, the rule reviews, the discussion, everything. And if they chose not to be, or they chose to have their representative there, which, by the way, their representative did vote for the adoption of the rules that will be put before the board tomorrow. So I am in favor of L002, and I would just say that because we have safety issues, healthcare concerns, quality of life issues, I could tell you stories about some of the facilities that I have been in. When you have people who are not even CNAs, MAs, or nurses dispensing medication, that's a problem. When people's medication has not been ordered properly and somebody has been without their meds for 2 weeks, being told, we'll just let you know when it comes in, this is part of the 40% that is driving 100% of our rising healthcare premiums for everyone else in the state. Everyone in an assisted living facility has the right to dignity and quality of life where they're there, and their family members should be able to have confidence that when a loved one or a relative or a friend of theirs is placed in an assisted living facility, that they will be taken care of correctly, appropriately, expediently, so that they don't incur other health care issues. This is also a problem in our smaller communities. Sometimes these communities have no other resources but one. And I was actually in one where I wrote 3 pages of things that I saw that either were done or were not done for the people who lived there. And I had to have a relative in this particular facility. And when talking to a nurse who was at the hospital, we had another relative that went to the hospital while I was visiting there, she said she had worked there, and she said, whatever you do, get your family member out of there as quickly as you can. So these rules are needed. We've needed to update these. Again, it's been since 1986 since they've had a huge overhaul of this. And every single one of us in this room may either be in a position to put a family member, a loved one, or a friend, if we're the guardian, or ourselves into one of these facilities, and we should all have the confidence that they are being run correctly, that they are taking care of the people who live there, and that people who live there are safe and have a good quality of life, because it is very expensive to be in assisted living facilities. They actually also need some funding to increase the number of folks that they call surveyors, who are really inspectors, to go out and inspect these facilities. I think it's noted in the resolution L002. The federal government provides funding to ensure that Colorado's 228 nursing homes in which residents require around-the-clock care are regularly surveyed for safety. And the department has 46 inspectors that do this specific job for the nursing homes. However, they don't receive funds from the federal government for our assisted living facilities. So I would urge an aye vote on L002.
Senator Crowder.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to be supportive of not only the bill, but the amendments, both of them. But meeting, just because 36% of the people met with CDHPE, anybody that's had any experience with CDHPE, there's no sense in going to meeting after meeting and hitting that roadblock and hitting that brick wall every time. So I can see that. But what we're looking at here is the ability for the 651 small assisted livings to continue to operate. I do believe that the regulations they have come up with are far too exceeding what we need. But we're not talking about nursing home, we're talking about assisted living. So I'm going to be very supportive of this, but I just come up to defend those people that did not show up at these meetings, because they know what it's like as well as I do. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on L002? Senator Martinez-Humanek.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Well, I'm going to come back up, and I'm just going to say that, yes, those small assisted living facilities did have the opportunity. They had the opportunity to sit there with that 35-member committee. It wasn't just CDPHE. These are multiple organizations, the state ombudsman from DRCOG. I think the lists were actually provided to your desk a couple of days ago or yesterday. So they did have a chance to have their voices heard. They did have a chance to be a part of the discussion, and these were not short meetings. These were meetings that went pretty much all day. So again, these smaller groups had a representative. They only participated 40% of the time, even though they could have called in from their own facility and participated in the meetings or listened to them and offered suggestions as well. So the fact that they are saying that they were cut out is not correct. And I know that because I attended these meetings and I listened into these meetings myself.
Is there any further discussion on L002? Seeing none, the motion for the body is the adoption of L002. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, L002 is adopted. There is another amendment on the desk. Mr. Carpenter, please read Amendment L005.
Amendment L005, just in Resolution
Senator Senator Lundberg. Berg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move L005 and don't ask that it be read. If I could just describe it briefly.
Please continue.
Thank you, Mr. President. We've had a very thorough discussion on on the amendment that was just adopted, which is in fact the resolution. The only substantive change that this amendment does is it extends the 4-month period that we're asking CDPHE to hold off on the implementation of these regulations on the small facilities to 6 months. And I ask for its favorable adoption.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. President. I apologize. We actually would have liked lines 6 and 7 struck from this amendment. They are still in there, and so I'd ask for a no vote on L005.
May I have a senatorial?
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I have a senatorial 5, please?
Being a senatorial 5. Senate will come back to order. Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. My apologies. I withdraw Amendment 5.
Amendment L005 is withdrawn. There is another amendment on the desk. Mr. Carpenter, please read Amendment L006.
Amendment L006, Senate Resolution.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Amendment 6, which is the appropriate amendment that does what I said 5 did.
Senator Kafalis.
Thank you, Mr. President. We rise in support of Amendment L006. This is based on our conversations. It does keep some provisions in that was being asked for by the small assisted living residences, but it also keeps in the references to the provider rate increase, the 25% provider rate increase, and some other aspects. So we are in support of Amendment L006.
Senator Martinez-Humana.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will be supporting L006. However, I do have a concern about striking the 4-month time period that this is going to be delayed to 6-month time period. Folks, we have had people that have been sexually assaulted. We have had people who have not gotten proper medical care. We have had a resident that was bludgeoned to death by his roommate. Delaying these rules going into effect doesn't help the people who are actually living in these facilities. But I am going to be in support of this. I'm just letting you know I don't like the 4 months going to 6 months, and that's just putting our citizens who are assisted living residents at risk.
Senator Kafalis.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for the discourse. Just to clarify, and perhaps the sponsor of the amendment can correct me if I don't have this right, because yes, we kept the 6 months, but we are not talking about, the rules will be adopted by the Board of Health tomorrow, and that's why we're discussing this resolution today. And we've also, in L006, we put in a date where the revisiting of some of these rules would start May 15th, and if you push that out 6 months, that gets us to November. But this will, I don't believe this will put people at risk, because the rules will go forward. This just gives an opportunity for the assisted living residences, the ones that serve less than 20 people, will have an ability the opportunity to meet with the department and other stakeholders to revisit some of the rules as they pertain to small ALRs. Thank you.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, I agree.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L006? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of L006. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Amendment L006 is adopted. Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll try to be brief here, but I do want to answer a couple of concerns so as to clarify what we're actually doing. Again, the original amendment that we did pass was a strike below, and I characterize it as the original amendment was a loaf, and this is a couple of slices left, to simply ask the department to think a little more carefully about this. And I want to refer to everyone, again, the letter that I put on your desk that is simply an example of one individual who owns 2 small assisted living facilities, who is stating outright, if you look at all of the regulations that are being put in place and will presumably be adopted by the board tomorrow, he'll be going out of business. We have somewhere between 600 and 700 small assisted living facilities across the state. My concern and my reason for bringing this up in the first place is that these are good facilities. Now, you've heard some concerns given. Well, let me give you 30 years ago, we talk about the last 24 months we've been looking at this. Well, okay, good. 30 years ago is when I first became aware of the small assisted living facilities. That's when I put my mother in one because she had Alzheimer's. And we searched for the very best situation for her, and we found it was the small assisted living facility. And why? Well, particularly when you have dementia, the people who care for you need to know you. And in a small facility, there is a very small staff, which, by the way, is why they can't make these meetings, because they have a small staff, and they are busy 24/7 looking after these people in a very self-sacrificial way. Anyway, we placed my mother in a small facility and found it to be excellent care for her. And I have ever since followed this very carefully. And when I entered the legislature 16 years ago, one of the first pieces of legislation I ran was concerning the small assisted living facilities. And consequently, I became associated with a lot of the facilities around the state, and I discovered that it's really tough for these folks to stay in an organized fashion, which is where the stakeholders come from. No, these are small operations, and they are the very best care for people who need that 24-hour care in just about every situation. Now, you heard, well, it's getting worse now. I can tell you that my mom, 30 years ago, needed a lot of care. Yeah, had she been left to wander on her own, she probably would have been one of those who would have been found dead somewhere. But that didn't happen because they knew her. And actually, on a couple of occasions, she did have to, due to some medical issues, go to a larger nursing home setting, skilled nursing home setting, for recovery from some medical issues. And that's where she almost died. Why? Because of lack of adequate care, because they didn't know her. I'll tell you, when some member of your family comes down with that awful disease of Alzheimer's or some similar dementia, you will begin to understand how vital it is for their caretakers to understand who they are, not just to be one of a staff of 20 or 30 that rotate in every 8 hours. No, I am carrying this, and these last few paltry slices of this loaf, which was just requesting that CDPHE take a little extra time and look at this a little bit harder, because it is going to close down and make it more difficult and make it more expensive. And let me add one other element too, because it is true that we bumped up the Medicaid coverage for assisted living by 25%, which is huge, except for the fact that the Medicaid support for assisted living is a fraction of what it is for skilled nursing. I'll just give you the number for my mom. And we supported her in this back then. There were no Medicaid beds available that I'm aware of, but we were paying $1,800 a month, and again, this was quarter century ago. When we had to rely on Medicaid, the assisted living facility was not available because they were not Medicaid covered. Instead, it was the skilled nursing, which was really no better care. It was adequate, but no better, no different really, except the larger group, of course. It was twice that cost, and that's what it is today, too. Skilled nursing care is twice the cost as assisted living facilities. So to bump up, and I think eventually when the care came, or when Medicaid beds were available, it was like $1,000 a month, even though the actual cost was twice that. So our bumping it up by 25% is just taking it up from a below-level subsistence to a subsistence level. Anyway, I will trim my thoughts at that and ask that we pass this to simply ask the Department of Health to go slow and recognize that they are jeopardizing a vital service for the people of Colorado if they fully implement all of the rules that they are most likely to adopt tomorrow. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Resolution 5. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Resolution 5 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Merrifield, Senator Aguilar, Senator Lambert, Senator Crowder, Senator Marble, Senator Kafalas, Senator Guzman, Senator Court, Leader Garcia, Senator Neville, Senator Todd, Senator Gardner, Senator Tate, Senator Kagan, consideration of House amendments to Senate bills. Assistant Majority Leader Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we lay over the balance of today's calendar until Wednesday, April 18th.
Motion is to lay over the balance of the calendar till Wednesday the 18th. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and that will lay over. Committee reports.
April 16, 2018, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs. After consideration, Mayor's Committee as follows: House Bill 1296, be amended as follows. I submit to for the committee to hold a favorable recommendation placed on the consent calendar.
Message from the House.
The House has passed on third reading, transmitted to the Riser of Statutes. House Bill 1209. The House has passed on third reading, transmitted to the Riser of Statutes. House Bill 1312, 1341, 1260, 1279, 1272, 1002, 1189, 1302, 1313, 1288, 1346, 1348, 1360. Amendments printed in the House Journal, April 16, 2018.
Message from the Reviser.
We herewith transmit without comment. House Bill 1209 without comment is amended. House Bill 1002, 1189, 1260, 1272, 1279, 1288, 1302, 1312, 1313, 1341, 1346, 1348, and 1360.
Message from the Governor.
The Honorable General Assembly, State Capitol. Dear members of the General Assembly, this clemency report is submitted to you on behalf of the Governor Hickenlooper as required under Article 4, Section 7 of the Colorado Constitution. I am attaching copies of the 17 executive orders granting clemency on March 29, 2018. I'm also attaching 16 letters that accompanied the pardons. The following persons were granted pardons on March 29, 2018. Curtis Aud for the 1986 crime of conspiracy to commit possession and distribution of marijuana committed in El Paso County. James Benavidez for the 1963 crime of burglary committed in La Plata County. Tracy Brigham for the 1991 crime of distribution of controlled substance Schedule 3 committed in Larimer County. Derek Clayton Broadfield for the 1984 crime second-degree burglary committed in El Paso County. Bruce Bryan for the 1969 crime of burglary committed in Larimer County. Michelle Cabanis for the 1990 crime of criminal attempt to commit sale of a controlled substance Schedule 1 committed in Larimer County. Justin Campbell for the 2005 crime of first-degree criminal trespass committed in Adams County. Brian Clear for the 1994 crimes of criminal mischief, second-degree burglary, criminal attempt, extreme indifference to murder, first-degree aggravated motor vehicle theft, aggravated juvenile offense, violation of a bail bond, and menacing with a deadly weapon committed in Mesa County. Dennis Heiser for the 1989 crime of attempted distribution of controlled substance committed in El Paso County. Frank Mays for the 1998 crime of possession of controlled substance Schedule 2 committed in Adams County. Patrick Noel for the 1994 crime of unlawful possession of a controlled substance, Schedule 4, committed in Larimer County. Julie Schultz for the 2003 crime of possession of Schedule 2 controlled substance, committed in El Paso County. Pamela Scott for the 1978 crime of second-degree assault, committed in Larimer County. Tisha Shastrian for the 1998 crime of possession of 8 ounces or more of marijuana, committed in Jefferson County. Dustin Weaver for the 2003 crime of assault, committed in Larimer County. Janae Weaver for the 2003 crime of harassment, committed in Larimer County. Cindy Williamson for the 1992 crime of possession of controlled substance, Schedule 4, committed in Adams County. Please feel free to contact the governor's office if you have any questions regarding the clemency process. Thank you. Sincerely, Jackie Cooper Melmid, Chief Legal Counsel.
Signing of bills.
The President has signed Senate Bill 146, 154, and 169. The President has signed House Bill 1008, 1029, 1047, 1191, 1198, 1227, 1242. The President has signed House Bill 1025, 1065, 1093, 1109, 1254, 1327, 1330.
Delivered to the governor.
To the governor for signature on Tuesday, April 17, 2018, 8:30 a.m. Senate Bill 1455, 151, 174, and 188.
Announcements. Senator Baumgardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, on your desk, you're going to find the Colorado Sportsman's Legislative Caucus reception, which is Thursday. Downstairs. One other thing.
Senator Baumgardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would ask to be excused tomorrow, April 18th. I have spoken with the majority leader and the minority leader.
You'll be excused. Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you, Mr. President. 1 year ago today, in Firestone, Colorado, a house near an oil and gas well exploded and burned. Later investigations found that the reason was an oil well 200 feet from the house had a pipe leading near the house that caused the explosion. It killed 2 in their home. 2 children lost their father. A mother was airlifted due to severe burns, who lost her husband and brother. The son escaped being burned by jumping out a second-floor window from his bedroom. In the 9 months following the Firestone tragedy, there were 14 more explosions from oil and gas operations, and 2 more were killed. When the industry was forced to pressure test wells and gas lines 1,000 feet from homes, 430 failed. In other words, 430 pipes failed leak tests and could explode. When Boulder County tested wells for gas leaks over a 3-year period, 2/3 of the wells were found to be leaking. They could explode. Gas leaks can also cause leukemia. A recent study found that if you're within 500 feet of a well, your chance of cancer is increased 8 times. 8 times. Oil and gas operations are not safe, period. Accidents happen. The oil and gas industry says they're safe. This is obviously not true. Oil and gas makes profit from our health and safety, though. It should be people over profit. The state's response to these explosions and deaths was, once again, weak. Oil companies, once again, fought the limited pipeline rules, now crow about how great they are. It's like your kid bringing home a bad report card and looking you straight in the face and telling you they got an A. We don't want this dangerous industrial activity in Boulder County, period. We don't want our mineral private property condemned so a corporation can profit. We don't want to be near wells that explode and could potentially give our children leukemia. The state's response to the explosions and the health study was that the 500-foot setback from wells, so don't worry. What they didn't say is that the setback rules are basically Swiss cheese with 3 huge exceptions. They don't tell you that 1 in 5 wells are placed on purpose within 1,000 feet of a home or an office or a school. They don't tell you that 15 explosions resulting in 4 deaths happened in 2017. They don't tell you that a high school football game was evacuated due to a well leak hundreds of feet from the field. These dangerous oil and gas operations don't belong near people period. After the Firestone tragedy and the 15 explosions and 4 deaths in 2017, it's time to protect our community's health and safety from fracking. It's time to pass a statewide ballot initiative establishing common sense protections for our communities from the dangers of oil and gas development and fracking. It's time we protect people, not profits, by voting for a 2,500-foot setback, basically a safety zone. For those who doubt that we need this, ask yourself right now, are you willing to move your family within 2,500 feet of an industrial operation that can and does explode, killing people, or risk your children getting cancer? Think about it. Why would you let any Coloradan take this risk? It's common sense. We need a 2,500-foot safety zone. On this sad anniversary of the Firestone tragedy, it is time we prioritize people over corporate profit. In 2017, there were 15 explosions that killed 4 people. When the industry was made to test, 430 well pipelines leaked. These operations are not safe. They are dangerous. They don't belong anywhere near our children, mothers, fathers, wives, husbands, brothers, or sisters. Thank you, Mr. President, for the moment of personal privilege.
Any further announcements? Senator Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Joint Budget Committee will not be meeting today, but we will intend to meet at 1:30 tomorrow.
System Majority Leader Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we recess until 1:30 p.m. today, unless you want to go later than that. No?
1:30 is fine. No?
That's fine? Okay. For 1:30 p.m. today, there are bills that need to be read across the desk. So members, you do not need to be here.
Motion for the body is for the Senate to stand in recess until 1:30 p.m. today. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and we will stand in recess.